Legendary singer, golden era, but fans sensed a secret. She finally speaks at 89. I'm Sarah Reed, and this is Golden American Legends. Here's the fast truth. Julie Andrews won the Best Actress Oscar in 1965 for Mary Poppins. And for many of us, that could have been the happy ending. But it wasn't. For years, people whispered that there was more to her story than cheerful songs and mountain air. Now, Julie herself has addressed it head-on, and it changes how we see everything that came before. I pulled through archival reels, old interviews, and the moments we all know by heart to stitch together the full picture. We'll retrace her rise from young prodigy to Hollywood queen, the hardships she kept quiet, and the truth she has now confirmed with calm grace. What's your favorite memory of Julie Andrews' performances? Mary Poppins or The Sound of Music? Pick one below and tell me why it stuck. This is not a takedown. It's a love letter with clear eyes. Let's start where the legend begins, the golden voice that shaped an era and the shadow that would one day fall across it. She had a voice that defined a generation. In number one, I want to sit with that sound for a moment. Julie Andrews' soprano was famously wide, bright, and effortless, soaring across a four-octave range that felt like sunlight. Listen in your mind to Feed the Birds or Do Re Mi. The clarity, the breath control, the bell tone at the top. There is nothing rushed, nothing forced. In 1964, Mary Poppins introduced that voice to the world in a new way. A year later, The Sound of Music sealed it. Awards followed because the work earned them, not because the industry was being kind. She made difficult music feel simple and joyful. That's the secret of true virtuosity. You never see the work, you only feel the ease. Even now, when I throw on those soundtracks, I hear a singer who balanced warmth and precision like a tightrope walker who never looks down. But here's the turn that keeps me up at night. Even the strongest instrument can be fragile. Her voice ruled hearts and shaped a whole era of musicals, but decades later, an even deeper truth would surface and explain why the music stopped. Stay with me for the reveal. Whispers traveled for years. In number two, we face what Julie Andrews herself finally said out loud. In her own words, "When I woke up from an operation to remove a cyst on my vocal cord, my singing voice was gone. Simple, final, and devastating." That surgery happened in 1997, and the result left her vocal cords scarred, the pliability changed, the upper register vanished. Her husband, director Blake Edwards, called it an absolute tragedy and doubted she would ever sing again. Fans had sensed something was wrong for a long time, but Julie remained graciously private, hoping, healing, trying. This quiet confirmation at 89 makes the story crystal clear. The instrument that carried Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp was permanently silenced. It isn't rumor anymore, it's her truth. If you've ever loved a voice so much that it felt like home, you understand the weight of those words. I do. But this is not where we end, it's where we rewind. To understand how we reached that night in the hospital, we need to go back to the very first steps onto the stage, when a young girl in post-war England opened her mouth and stunned a room. Greatness leaves clues early. In number three, we go back to London, where Julie Andrews grew up learning to use that precise silvery instrument long before the cameras found her. As a child, she sang with a purity that stopped audiences. By her early teens, she was performing operettas and pantomimes, taking stages that were far bigger than most kids ever dream about. She learned discipline the old-fashioned way: rehearsal rooms, vocal coaches, and the grind of nightly shows. By her early 20s, she was leading Broadway musicals like My Fair Lady and Camelot, drawing raves and earning major nominations. That is not luck, that is craft. The rigors of stage work shaped her breath, diction, and stamina. It's why those later film numbers glide. They were built on years of muscle and muscle memory. Watching early clips, I always think, there is no wobble, no panic, just a young artist already in full command. She wasn't just promising, she was sure-footed. That early foundation would carry her across oceans and into movie palaces. She was racing toward a rare kind of stardom, and the moment Hollywood called, everything changed for good. The leap looked effortless. In number 4, we watched the door to Hollywood swing wide. Walt Disney heard Julie Andrews and wanted that voice and that wit to anchor Mary Poppins in 1964. She said yes, and the result was magic. Not the digital kind, the human kind. Poppins gave her the Best Actress Oscar in 1965, but more than that, it gave her a new kind of audience, families who would return to her again and again. On stage, she had sparkled in Camelot and other big musicals. On film, she added a twinkle of mischief and warmth that the camera adored. The phrasing, the timing, the way she could float a note and then land a punchline, there it was, a complete performer standing at the center of a major studio musical. I always think of it as a perfect match between role and artist. The nanny who arrives by wind and umbrella was confident, compassionate, and meticulous. So was Julie. And just when it seemed like she had reached a pinnacle, the next project would turn her from star to phenomenon. The Alps were calling, and the world would answer. Some careers spike. In number 5, hers becomes a tidal wave. The Sound of Music arrived in 1965 and remade moviegoing. Julie Andrews as Maria von Trapp wasn't just a casting win, it felt like destiny. Those songs, Do Re Mi, My Favorite Things, Climb Every Mountain, rolled across continents. Families sang them in kitchens and cars and classrooms. The film's box office heights and awards are part of the record, but what matters to me is how her voice carried kindness without losing strength. She could beam joy and still hold the line on every note. That's hard. That's why it endures. I've met people who learned their first musical scales because of that movie. If those opening hills live rent-free in your head, drop a like and let me know I'm not alone. The point is simple. At this stage, Julie Andrews wasn't just a star. She was a cultural anchor, the gateway for generations into the language of musicals. And yet, even at this height, life off-screen had its own currents. Success filled the theaters. Meanwhile, the private story gathered weight, step by quiet step. The spotlight did not dim. In number 6, we watch Julie Andrews keep evolving. Through the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, she headlined films like Thoroughly Modern Millie and Victor Victoria, projects that stretched style and comedy while still letting that voice dazzle. She didn't stay in one lane. She crossed from film to television, leading variety specials and concert programs that brought classic standards into living rooms. Awards followed, Grammys for beloved recordings and Emmys for standout television work, along with more Tony nods, proof that the industry recognized the craft as much as the charm. But the bigger legacy is influence. Young performers studied her breath, her diction, her poise, and learned that technique and heart can live in the same note. When I teach or coach, I still point to her phrasing as a masterclass in clarity. If this kind of deep dive storytelling hits home, please subscribe, like, and share. We're only halfway through, and the next chapters matter even more. Because while the marquees glowed bright, the offstage world grew heavier. Love, family, and the fragile realities of health began to shape the story in ways no standing ovation could fix. The camera never shows everything. In number 7, we step behind the curtain. Julie Andrews married filmmaker Blake Edwards in 1969, building a blended family that included her daughter from a first marriage and, later, 2 adopted daughters. Their home life had laughter and normal chaos, but it also had daunting health battles. Blake struggled for years with serious illness, including Parkinson's and heart complications. Julie became a caregiver as much as a legend, holding down the fort with quiet strength while the world assumed a life of ease. I think about that a lot, the weight people carry without applause. When Blake passed in 2010, it closed a chapter that had cost them both so much energy and love. Through it, Julie stayed gracious and almost fiercely private, letting the work speak while she handled what mattered most. That context matters now because it shows the character behind the career. It also sets the stage for the hardest turn of all. Then came 1997, the moment everything changed for her as a singer. The choice seemed small, even routine. The outcome would rewrite the rest of her story. Tiny decisions can have giant echoes. In number 8, we reach the day the music stopped. In June of 1997, Julie Andrews underwent microsurgery to remove what was believed to be a benign cyst on a vocal cord. Procedures like that can be straightforward. This one was not. Scar tissue formed, flexibility disappeared, the brilliant top notes went first, then the middle lost its play. She described waking up and realizing her singing voice was gone. Her husband called it an absolute tragedy, and honestly, that phrase still hits like a bell. Overnight, the instrument that had carried Mary Poppins and Maria into history was no longer there to carry her. She pursued therapy, explored options, even sought accountability for what happened. None of it restored the sound we knew. I can't imagine the grief of that loss, to have your voice, the place your life lives, fall quiet. And yet, this isn't a story that ends in silence. After the darkest news came the most radical response. She refused to disappear. So if the song had ended, what could a voice become? The answer is the next chapter. Endings can spark reinvention. In number 9, Julie Andrews proves it. She pivoted to storytelling that didn't require high notes but still needed heart. She co-authored a shelf of children's books with her daughter Emma, wrote about friendship and courage, and recorded audiobooks that let her speaking voice carry the warmth the songs once held. Then came a fresh twist. As the unseen voice of Lady Whistledown, she became the sly narrator of a hit period drama, turning her diction into a delicious secret weapon. No song required, just timing, texture, and play. She hosted concerts, shared stage memories, and mentored performers who grew up on her films. The message was clear. A voice is more than pitch. It's presence, it's point of view. It's the way you hold an audience and guide them through a feeling. Watching her lean into that truth has always felt brave to me, not because she kept smiling, but because she found honest, sustainable work that honored what she could still do, beautifully. And yet, all along, the internet kept churning. Claims bloomed, myths spread. Time to clean the slate. The internet loves a tall tale. In number 10, we sort signal from noise. First, yes, Julie Andrews is the unmistakable voice behind Lady Whistledown. That crisp, teasing narration is hers. Second, the hard truth holds. She did not regain her singing voice. No miracle hack, no secret training plan, no surprise comeback concert. Scarred chords do not simply return to peak. Third, about future appearances. She has been gracious but frank that some projects fans dream about, like a third royal sequel, are unlikely for her. She chooses carefully and speaks sparingly, and I respect that. The pattern across all of this is simple. When the claim comes from Julie herself, it is grounded and clear. When it comes from wishful headlines, it tends to drift. That's why her recent words at 89 matter so much. They cut through decades of speculation and bring us back to reality with grace. Myths entertained people for a while. Her honesty honors them for a lifetime. Now that the dust is settled, we can hear the confirmation we've been waiting for, straight from her. Here it is at last! In number 11, Julie Andrews speaks plainly in a recent conversation and removes any lingering doubt. She reaffirms that the 1997 surgery left permanent damage, that therapies and efforts could not rebuild the instrument, and that she has made peace with that truth. She talks about gratitude for the years she had as a singer, for the audience that stayed, for new ways to tell stories. She explains that sharing this again, now, is about clarity and closure, not shock value. Hearing that, I felt relief more than sadness, because there's dignity in naming reality. There's power in choosing the life you can have, not the one you lost. And that is exactly what she has done for decades since. To me, that makes the movies and the albums even brighter. They're not delicate souvenirs. They're the mighty record of a working artist who met a hard fate and still kept giving. One final turn remains. With the timelines clear and the truth confirmed, we can finally talk about what endures when the curtain falls. What is the legacy she leaves us now? In number 12, we step back and see the whole portrait. Julie Andrews gave us indelible characters, a once-in-a-century voice, and a masterclass in grace under pressure. The hits are part of our lives now. Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, Victor Victoria, and the way she carried herself after 1997 is part of that legacy too. She faced loss without bitterness and found a second act built on words, wit, and generosity. That is why her confirmation at 89 matters. It invites us to honor the facts and still feel joy. I will always hear her in the hush between notes, the poise, the care, the kindness. Here on Golden American Legends, I try to hold space for legends who keep teaching us how to live. If this story moved you, please subscribe, like, and share so more people can see it. Thanks for watching. How will you remember Julie Andrews? As Mary Poppins, as Maria, or as the woman who turned silence into a new kind of song? For me, it's all of the above. That's the fuller truth, and it's a beautiful one to carry forward.